Bonjour YouTube. Hello. We've seen in the video number 2, we've seen the street where I was brought up, which is 167 Linden Street. So here we see Linden Street, and this is our neighbors. These people were called the Princes. And I saw one day these people, we didn't have TV because my mother was very strict about, she didn't like TV. She said TV made people have cancer in the brain. My mother was like she was against modern technology and stuff like that. So we were invited to see if Bambi. There was a film called Bambi by Walt Disney. You know, Michael Jackson was called Bambi. There was a film called Bambi, and so we went to see this film Bambi at these people's houses. These people were the princes. They were very nice people. It's funny because this house is very wild now. Now we had a lot of people, friends who lived down in this direction here. If you follow this street, you get down to Livingston Street. And this is Livingston Street. You're going to see that now. We had a lot of friends who lived here. Here we go. Livingston Street. Take Livingston Street. We had a lot of friends who lived here. One family was called the Greens who lived here. I used to take this street a lot to go to the park. I used to take this street to go to school. Livingston Street. Now, taking this Livingston Street would take us to the park. There was a big park here, the East Rock Park. And Willow Street, yeah, Willow Street. Oops. I don't know why they don't want us to go on further. There we go. They don't seem to want to. I know why they don't want us to go further. It's because they don't have anybody who's made any photos of this area. So that's it. Beyond this, nobody's made any photos. So anyways, you've got a good idea. You've got a good idea of that area, the Linden Street, Livingston Street, Whitney Avenue. That's basically where I spent the first 7 years of my life. And I used to take the bus from Whitney Avenue, and that would be 3 miles up the road to Hamden. And in Hamden, I used to I go to school. So that was in Hamden is where, and now my sister and I went to school in Hamden, and there we go. So you see here, I'm going to show you Hamden. There we go. Here we're in Hamden here. Here we go. Oops. Yeah. Well, once you get out, they lose you. No. Okay. Well, we lost that. Okay. I'll try to get back to that later. I spent my years there in Hamden, Hamden, New Haven, until 7. So that's where I learned spelling, reading. I learned a bit of French in my last year. I learned my first words of French. Now I speak French fluently. Je parle français parfaitement maintenant. And during those 7 years, my mother used to take us. My mother would spare a lot of money. She'd spare a lot of money so that we could go on vacation during the 3 months of summer vacation. We could go to Norway. My mother was Norwegian, so she wanted to go home. So during the 3 months of every summer, we used to from New Haven we used to go to New York. New York we used to take ships because my mother could get free trips on ships because she knew family who were in the shipping business. So in New York we'd get on ships. We'd take those ships all the way back to Norway. In Norway she'd rent cars, and then we'd go to these summer vacation places where her family had a little spot by the seashore. And so my mother would take these 2 kids which she had from New Haven, Connecticut. She'd put them in these summer places in Norway. It's an incredible travel each time from New Haven, Connecticut. Take these kids all the way back to Norway by ship via New Haven, via New York. It's an incredible trip. And then what really influenced me and was a big mark for me was these 3 weeks which we'd spend on ships, because I think it was 3 weeks at that time. This was in the 1950s, late 50s, and the ships were starting to become modern. These were no longer sail ships. I mean, just before that it was sail ships. Like in the last, I remember I read books about this. The last sail ships were in the 1940s and 1930s, 40s, 1950s when we were taking the ships. These were the first machine ships. All ships were all machines. And we spent 3 weeks each time. So when I was a little kid of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we did 3 or 4 or 5 trips. I don't know exactly how many trips. We did a lot of trips back and forth. So that really was a big influence for me. And then when we were in Norway, by the time we reached Norway, we spent two or 2.5 months there. And we studied, and I learned Norwegian. I learned to speak Norwegian. I read some Norwegian because we were there for 2.5 months, and the little kids like me, like 2, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, when you first start learning to read, then you can read very quickly because you learn very quickly. So I learned how to read, and that's how I learned how to read Norwegian, because we had Norwegian books and everything. And so my mother was a Norwegian, so of course she was spending 2.5 months out in Norway. And so she had these Norwegian books, and she was listening to Norwegian radio, and she was like that. It was a pretty special lady, man.